She was rejected at the winter festival gathering. Then a little girl asked, "Why are you crying?" Bells rang softly, calling nobles, lords, and ladies to the winter festival gathering, the most important night of the year. This was the night when fate listened. Inside the great hall, warmth fought against the cold. Fire burned in wide hearths. White banners hung from the ceiling, marked with silver symbols of old magic. Music drifted through the air, slow and careful, as if afraid to disturb something unseen. At the edge of the hall stood Elowen Vale. She did not wear jewels like the others. Her gown was simple, deep gray, like winter clouds before snowfall. Her dark hair was braided loosely down her back, and her hands were folded tightly in front of her, as if holding herself together. Many eyes watched her, some with curiosity, some with quiet judgment, some with fear. Everyone in Irinth knew the name Vale. Her family had once been powerful. Long ago they had guarded old magic tied to the seasons themselves. But something went wrong, stories differed, truth was buried. The result was always the same. The Vale bloodline was said to be cursed. Elowen had grown up hearing whispers. Children stepped away from her in the streets. Servants crossed themselves when she passed. Nobles smiled politely, but never warmly. Tonight, though, she stood here because hope is stubborn. At the center of the hall sat King Alaric Thornhelm. He wore black and silver, the crown resting heavy on his dark hair. His face was calm, carved by years of rule and loss. Since the death of his queen, the king had been alone, bound more to his crown than to any living soul. The kingdom depended on him. Winter had grown harsher each year, crops failed, rivers froze too early. Old scholars whispered that the balance of the realm was breaking. Tonight the king would choose. Not only a political alliance, but a bond strong enough to steady the kingdom itself. Elowen's heart beat painfully in her chest as her name was called. She stepped forward. The music softened. The crowd leaned in. She stopped several steps away from the throne, lowering her head in respect. Her breath came slow, controlled. She had practiced this moment 100 times in her mind. King Alaric studied her. He saw more than her calm face. He saw the weight she carried, the quiet strength, the sadness she hid too well. For a moment, only a moment, something unreadable crossed his eyes. Then duty won. "Elowen Vale," he said, his voice steady and clear. "You have honored this gathering with your presence." She lifted her gaze. "I must speak plainly," he continued. "The crown cannot accept this bond." The words fell like ice. A hush spread through the hall. Elowen did not move. She did not speak. The rejection struck her deeper because it was gentle. There was no anger, no cruelty, only finality. "The kingdom stands on fragile ground," the king said. "I cannot risk what I do not fully understand." Everyone understood what he meant. Her blood, her name, her curse. "I wish you no harm," he added quietly. "May winter pass you by." With that, the choice was sealed. Elowen bowed once more, slower this time, and stepped back. No one stopped her. She walked through the hall as whispers followed like shadows. She kept her head high until the great doors closed behind her. Outside, the cold struck hard. Snow fell gently, covering the world in white silence. The music inside faded. The laughter disappeared. The festival continued without her. Elowen walked until the palace lights dimmed behind the trees. Then she stopped. Her strength gave way. She leaned against an old frost-covered pillar, her breath shaking. Tears came quietly, slipping down her cheeks and freezing against the cold air. She had known this was possible, but knowing did not make it hurt less. She pressed a hand to her chest as if trying to calm the ache there. Years of holding back, of pretending she did not care, broke apart in the silence. "I should not have hoped," she whispered. Snow crunched softly behind her. Elowen froze. She turned, expecting a guard or perhaps a curious noble. Instead, she saw a child standing a short distance away. A little girl. She could not have been more than 7 years old. The child wore a thin white dress, untouched by snow. Her feet were bare, resting on frozen ground without leaving marks. Her hair was pale, almost silver, and her eyes were deep blue, too old for such a young face. Aloan's tears slowed. "Child," she said gently, wiping her face, "you should not be out here. You'll freeze." The girl tilted her head. "You are the one crying," she replied softly. "Why?" Aloan was taken aback. She paused. "It is nothing you should worry about." The girl stepped closer. Snow did not cling to her. Frost gathered lightly around her feet like the ground was greeting her. "You were rejected," the child said simply. Aloan stiffened. "That is not a word children usually know," she said carefully. The girl smiled, not sweetly but knowingly. "Names are important," she said. "So are broken things." Aloan felt a strange chill, not from the cold but from recognition she could not explain. "And you are broken?" the girl asked. Aloan laughed softly, bitter but tired. "Perhaps." The child studied her face closely. "You carry a heavy winter," she said. "But it is not yours alone." Aloan's breath caught. "Who are you?" she asked. "My name is Lies," the girl replied. "I was looking for you." Aloan frowned. "You know me?" Lies nodded. "You are called the Lady of the Broken Star." The world seemed to stop. Aloan stepped back. Her heart raced. "No one calls me that," she whispered. "No one knows that name." It had been spoken only once, long ago, by her mother before she died. Lies smiled gently. "Winter remembers," she said. A deep silence settled over the trees. From the palace far behind them, the festival bells rang again. But their sound felt distant, wrong, like echoes from another life. Aloan looked at the child standing barefoot in the snow, untouched by cold, speaking truths no one should know. "What do you want from me?" she asked quietly. Lies looked up at the dark sky where snowflakes drifted like falling stars. "To ask you a question," she said. She met Aloan's eyes. "Will you let winter choose again?" The wind rose suddenly. Snow lifted from the ground, not falling but rising. Aloan's breath fogged the air as something ancient stirred beneath the frozen earth. And far away, deep within the palace, King Alaric felt the fire in the great hall flicker and nearly go out. It hovered in the air, trembling, as if the world itself was holding its breath. Aloan stood frozen, her cloak pulled tight around her, eyes fixed on the little girl before her. The wind whispered through the bare trees, carrying a sound that felt like an old memory rather than a voice. "Will you let winter choose again?" Lies had asked. Aloan did not answer at once. Her heart beat loudly in her ears. "What does that mean?" she finally said. Lies lowered her gaze to the floating snow. Slowly she raised one small hand. The snow followed her movement, drifting gently back to the earth, settling as if nothing strange had happened. "Not here," the girl said. "Too many ears." Aloan looked around. The palace stood far behind them, its towers tall and cold. The festival sounds were faint now. No one else stood among the trees. Still, unease wrapped around her. "You should come inside," Aloan said carefully. "You don't belong out here." Lies looked up, her blue eyes steady. "I belong where winter walks," she replied. That answer should have frightened Aloan. Instead, it filled her with a deep sadness she could not explain. "Where are your parents?" Aloan asked. "I do not have them," Lies said. "Not anymore." The words were calm, but something old hid behind them. Aloan sighed softly. Against reason, she reached out and placed her cloak around the child's shoulders. Lies did not pull away. "You will freeze," Aloan said. "I will not," Lies replied. "But you might." Aloan almost smiled. They began walking deeper into the quiet garden paths that circled the palace grounds. Snow crunched under Aloan's boots. Liza's bare feet made no sound. As they walked, Aloan felt a strange pull, as if she were being led, not guiding. "How did you find me?" Aloan asked. Liz tilted her head. "I always know where you are." Aloan stopped walking. "That is not possible." Liz turned to face her. "You carry a mark the world remembers." Aloan's hand went instinctively to her chest. "My family carried curses," she said, "not marks." Liz shook her head. "They carried promises, the curse came later." Elowen felt her throat tighten. What promises? Lies did not answer. Instead, she asked, "Do you know why the winters grow longer?" Elowen frowned. Scholars argue about it. Some say it is fate. Others say the gods turned away. Lies looked up at the sky. "The covenant is broken." Elowen stared at her. "What covenant?" "The one between the crown and the season," Lies said softly, "between love and rule." Elowen felt a cold deeper than winter spread through her. "You speak like a priest," she said. Lies smiled faintly. "I speak like winter." They reached a stone bench beneath an old tree bent by snow. Elowen sat, exhausted. Lies climbed beside her, legs swinging. "You were rejected tonight," Lies said again. "But the rejection was not yours alone." Elowen closed her eyes. "Please," she whispered, "do not speak of it." Lies watched her closely. "The king fears what he cannot control," the child said, "but control is already slipping." At that very moment, far inside the palace, King Alaric Thornhelm stood alone before the great hearth. The fire burned low. He stared into the flames, jaw tight, heart heavy. He had done what duty demanded. He told himself that again and again. Still, something felt wrong. The hall behind him was filled with voices and music, but none of it reached him. His thoughts returned to Elowen's face, not angry, not begging, only quietly hurt. He pressed his hand to the arm of his chair. A sudden cold swept through the room. The fire flickered, then dimmed. Alaric frowned. That had never happened before. "More wood," he ordered. The servants obeyed, but even as flames rose again, the warmth did not fully return. That night, when the festival ended and silence claimed the palace, Alaric did not sleep. When he finally did, dreams took him. He stood in a frozen field beneath a broken sky. Snow fell upward. A woman knelt in the distance, crying beneath a star split in two. Between them stood a child, watching him with eyes full of knowing. He woke with a sharp breath, heart racing. "Elowen," he whispered. Back in the garden, Elowen shivered. She had not noticed how cold it had become. "Come with me," Lies said suddenly. "Where?" "To a place that remembers truth." Elowen hesitated. Everything in her told her this was dangerous, but another voice, quiet and old, urged her forward. "All right," she said. They walked beyond the garden toward an ancient stone arch half buried in snow. Elowen had seen it before but had never passed through it. Few did. Lies stepped beneath it without fear. The air changed. Sound faded. The world felt deeper, heavier. "This place is old," Elowen said. "Yes," Lies replied. "It was built when your bloodline still sang with winter." Elowen's breath caught. Beneath the arch, symbols glowed faintly on the stone, marks that mirrored the birthmark hidden beneath Elowen's collarbone. She pulled back her cloak. The mark burned gently with silver light. "I have never seen it glow," she whispered. "It awakens," Lies said. "Because the balance is breaking." Elowen knelt, overwhelmed. "You speak of balance," she said, "but all I have known is loss." Lies knelt too, meeting her eyes. "Loss is not the end," the child said. "It is the door." Elowen laughed softly, tears rising again. "I do not want to be strong," she said. "I only wanted to belong." Lies reached out and took her hand. "You were never meant to beg for belonging," she said. "You were meant to choose." "Choose what?" Lies's voice grew quiet. "Whether winter remains cruel," she said, "or learns mercy." The ground trembled faintly. Far away, the palace bells rang once, without anyone touching them. Elowen felt the pull of something vast and watching. "What happens if I refuse?" she asked. Lies looked sad. "Then winter will take without asking," she said, "and the king will fall with his crown still on his head." Elowen closed her eyes. She thought of the hall, the rejection, the silence. She thought of Alaric's eyes, tired, bound by duty, afraid to hope. "I do not want revenge," she said. Lies smiled softly. "Good." Elowen opened her eyes. "But I will not be forgotten." Lies nodded. "Then you must return," she said. "To the palace?" Elowen asked. "Yes," Lies replied. "Not as you were." The wind rose again, circling them. Snow lifted into the air. Elowen stood slowly, her fear replaced by something steady. "What am I becoming?" she asked. Lies looked at her with gentle certainty. Not a curse, she said, a reckoning. From the palace, unseen by both, King Alaric stepped onto his balcony, drawn by a sudden chill. He looked out across the frozen land. For the first time since taking the crown, he felt something close to fear. And somewhere beyond the trees, Aloan turned back toward the lights of the palace, no longer running from them. Aloan stood before them as dawn began to rise, pale light spreading across the snow-covered stones. The world looked the same, yet she felt different inside, like something old had opened its eyes. Beside her stood Lies, quiet and watchful. Once you pass through, Lies said softly, you cannot return to what you were. Aloan nodded. I already left that behind. The gates opened slowly as if sensing her presence. Guards stiffened as she walked past, eyes widening. Some stepped back without knowing why. Winter moved with her, not as cold but as awareness. Inside the palace, servants paused in their work. Candles flickered. The air felt sharp, alive. Word spread quickly. Aloan Vale has returned. In the throne chamber, King Alaric stood before a long table covered in maps and reports. His advisors spoke in worried voices, failed harvests, frozen roads, unrest in the north. Then silence fell. He turned. Aloan stood at the far end of the hall. She did not bow, she did not lower her eyes. The room seemed to breathe in. Alaric felt it at once, that deep shift in the air, the same feeling from his dreams. His chest tightened. Clear the chamber, he said quietly. His advisors hesitated. Now, they obeyed. When the doors closed, only 3 remained, Aloan, King Alaric, and the little girl standing calmly at Aloan's side. Alaric's gaze fixed on Lies. Who is she? He asked. Lies smiled gently. Someone you forgot. Alaric felt a chill he could not explain. Aloan, he said, turning to her, you should not be here. She met his eyes. Neither should the winter you rule, she replied. Her voice was steady. Not cruel, not weak. True. Alaric swallowed. If you came for apology, you have it. I regret the pain I caused. I did not come for apology, Aloan said. I came for truth. She stepped forward. With every year winter deepens, she said. Your throne weakens, you know this. Alaric nodded slowly. I do. And still you fear what might save it. His jaw tightened. I fear what may destroy it. Lies walked forward, small footsteps echoing. The covenant does not ask for fear, she said. It asks for balance. Alaric stared at her. What covenant? The one your blood broke, Lies replied calmly. The king felt the weight of generations settle on his shoulders. Speak plainly, he said. Aloan lifted her cloak slightly, revealing the silver mark glowing faintly at her skin. Alaric's breath caught. That mark, he whispered. It appears in our oldest records. Yes, Aloan said. My family was meant to guard it, not be blamed for it. Silence stretched. You rejected me because you feared my curse, she continued. But the curse is not mine alone. Lies looked up at Alaric. Long ago, she said, a king chose control over compassion. He bound winter without consent. It obeyed, but it never forgave. Alaric closed his eyes. That king was my ancestor. Yes, Lies said, and every ruler after paid the price. Aloan watched Alaric carefully. She saw the struggle in him, the weight of duty, the quiet regret, the fear of failing his people. I will not be used, Aloan said softly. Not by magic, not by crown. Alaric opened his eyes. What do you want? He asked. To choose, she replied. The ground trembled lightly as if the palace itself listened. Lies stepped back, her form growing faint at the edges. My time shortens, she said. The covenant strains. Aloan turned sharply. What do you mean? I am tied to imbalance, Lies said. When it heals or breaks, I fade. Alaric felt something twist painfully in his chest. What must be done? He asked. Lies looked between them. Either Aloan binds herself to the throne, she said, or winter will bind itself without mercy. Aloan inhaled sharply. Binding means losing myself, she said. Yes, Lies replied, and not binding means losing everything else. Alaric stepped forward. Then I will step aside, he said. I will abdicate in the line. Lies shook her head. That would shatter the realm. Elowen looked at him, surprised. You would give up the crown, she asked. For the kingdom, Alaric replied. And for you, the words hung between them. Elowen felt something break open inside her, not relief, not joy, but deep sorrow mixed with warmth. You cannot save me by destroying yourself, she said. And you cannot save us by vanishing, he replied. The room grew colder. Frost crept along the stone floor. Elowen stepped forward until she stood before the throne. She placed her hand on its arm. The silver mark flared bright. The throne answered. Ice traced its edges, not sharp but living. Alaric dropped to one knee, breath stolen. Elowen, he whispered. What are you doing? Claiming my voice, she said. She turned to Lies. I will choose, Elowen said clearly. But not as sacrifice, not as prisoner. Lies smiled, though tears shone in her eyes, then shaped the covenant anew. Elowen closed her eyes. She remembered the rejection, the loneliness, the longing to belong. She opened them again. I will stand with the throne, she said. Not beneath it. The frost receded slightly. The palace steadied. Alaric rose slowly, awe and humility on his face. What does that make you? He asked. Elowen met his gaze. Not your queen, she said. Not yet. The crown atop Alaric's head began to freeze, ice blooming across its silver surface. Pain crossed his face, but he did not cry out. The weight of old choices pressed down. Elowen reached out and placed her hand over his. The ice stopped spreading. For a moment their hands rested together, power meeting restraint, longing meeting resolve. Lies stepped back, her form fading further. The choice has begun, she said softly. Outside, the sky darkened, though it was day. Snow fell upward once more. Across the kingdom, people looked to the sky in fear and wonder. And in the throne chamber, Elowen stood beside the king, not as a rejected guest, but as the turning point of winter itself. Snow still rose into the sky instead of falling. Rivers stood frozen in place, not moving forward or back, as if time itself had paused to watch what would happen next. Inside the palace, the throne chamber felt like the center of the world. Elowen stood beside King Alaric, her hand still resting over his. The ice on the crown had stopped spreading, but it had not melted. It remained clear and sharp, like a reminder carved in cold. Lies stood a few steps away. She was fading. Her outline was softer now, like mist in moonlight. The glow in her eyes dimmed, but her gaze remained calm. The covenant listens, Lies said quietly. Speak carefully. Elowen looked at the throne, at the symbols glowing faintly along the walls. She felt winter around her, not cruel, not kind, but waiting. She had been feared all her life. Now she was being answered. I will not bind winter with pain, Elowen said. Her voice was steady, though her heart trembled. Nor will I rule it with fear. The floor beneath her feet warmed slightly, not with heat but with life. Alaric watched her as if seeing her for the first time. What will you give then? He asked softly. Elowen closed her eyes. She thought of her family, their fall, their silence. She thought of standing alone in the garden, crying beneath the trees. She thought of the crown, heavy with duty, sharp with old mistakes. I will give choice, she said. Her mark shone bright silver. I will stand as bridge, Elowen continued. Between crown and season, between rule and mercy, winter will serve the realm, not punish it. The air shifted. Frost melted along the edges of the chamber. Not fully, but enough to breathe again. Lies smiled. This was always possible, she said, but never allowed. Alaric took a step forward. And what of you? He asked Elowen. What does this cost you? Elowen opened her eyes. For a long time, she said, I believed I had to disappear to keep others safe. I believed love was something I was not meant to touch. She looked at him then, not as king, but as man. I was wrong. Alaric felt his chest tighten. I will not lose myself, Elowen said. But I will not walk away either, the throne responded. The ice around it cracked, not breaking, but reshaping. Silver lines formed where frost had been, like veins of light. The crown trembled. Alaric removed it slowly and stepped down from the throne. He knelt. Not because magic forced him, because he chose to. I failed you, he said quietly, and I failed the realm by ruling without listening. Aloan reached out and lifted his chin gently. Stand, she said. Rule with me, not above me. He rose. Together they turned toward the throne. Aloan placed her hand upon it once more. I accept this bond, she said, but it will be shared. The throne glowed. Outside, across Irinth, the snow began to fall again, this time downward, soft, gentle, right. People stepped from their homes in wonder. Children laughed as flakes touched their hands without burning cold. Farmers felt the earth stir beneath frozen fields. Winter was still winter, but it no longer hunted. Inside the chamber, Lies let out a slow breath. It is done, she said. Aloan turned sharply. Then you will stay, Lies smiled sadly. I was never meant to. Her form shimmered, becoming light. What are you? Aloan asked, her voice breaking. Lies stepped closer, reaching up to touch Aloan's hand. I am the echo of every choice denied, she said gently, and the proof that they can be reclaimed. Tears slipped down Aloan's face. Will we see you again? Lies looked past her toward the windows where snow now fell peacefully. Every winter that remembers kindness, she said, I will be there. And then she was gone, not in pain, not in fear, only in light. Silence filled the chamber. Alaric exhaled slowly. The kingdom will speak of this for generations, he said. Aloan nodded. Let them speak truth. In the days that followed, change moved through Irinth like a quiet dawn. The court watched Aloan carefully. Some feared her, some respected her. Many did not yet understand. She did not sit on the throne, she stood beside it. She listened more than she spoke. When she did speak, even the oldest lords paused. Winter obeyed her not as servant but as partner. Alaric ruled differently now. He asked instead of commanded. He listened instead of assumed. When doubt rose, he turned to Aloan not for answers but for balance. At night they walked the palace walls together. They spoke of loss, of hope, of what might be built slowly. They did not rush what grew between them. Some things needed time to heal. One evening, as snow fell softly around them, Alaric stopped. I once believed love made a ruler weak, he said. Aloan looked at him. And now? I believe it teaches restraint, he replied. And courage, she smiled faintly. Good, she said. Winter listens to courage. Below them, the city glowed with warm light. For the first time in many years, people did not fear the season ahead. Aloan looked toward the horizon. She could still feel winter watching, not waiting to take, but to learn. Far beyond the kingdom, deep in the old mountains, ancient forces stirred, not in anger but in curiosity. The world had changed, and change, like winter, was never truly finished. Aloan Vale, once rejected, once broken, stood at the heart of the realm, not as a curse, not as a sacrifice, but as a choice made visible. And as snow touched the earth gently once more, the kingdom understood. Winter could remember love.